The meeting of the USD 305 School Board to order for the January 10th, 2023 meeting. Please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. We will start with approval of the agenda, and we have modified our agenda slightly to add two new executive sessions down in Roman numeral 12. Do I have a motion to modify the agenda in this way, to approve the modified agenda? Mark.
Madam President, I move we approve the modified agenda as presented here.
It's been moved. Jim seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 6-0. Next on the agenda is the recognitions and presentations with the Renaissance teachers and Jennifer Camion.
Today we recognize our Renaissance Teachers of the Month, September through December 2022. Will they please join Superintendent Exline in the front of the room? Renaissance teachers are recognized through radio announcements, social media, and on the USD 305 website. September to December, Renaissance Teachers of the Month were Central High School, Stephanie Johannes, Math, Ryan Holmquist, Choir, Lakewood Middle School, Janine Fehl, Counselor, Cindy Bray, 8th grade English, South High School, Joseph Turner, English, South Middle School, Matt Gary, guitar, Brooke Jennings, 6th grade reading, Bianca Adams, special education. Due to prior commitments, the following were unable to be with us this evening: Tony Slothauer and Tracy Pfeiffer, Central High; Brian Nowak and Ann Barry, Lakewood Middle; Ryan Schaefer, Carrie Vandekreek, and Juan Maldonado, South High; Miranda Lumley at South Middle. And after I get a picture, would you please allow the board to congratulate you? But let's get a picture.
Thank you, teachers. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda, and that includes today minutes of the December 13th, 2022 regular meeting, personnel reports, financial reports, including December bills list, the November treasurer's report, the November investment report, November journal entries, to approve encumbrance listings, including to Dell in the amount of $520,605 for the purchase of Chromebooks and Google Chrome licenses, to Dell in the amount of $1,336,885 for the purchase of laptops for teachers, administrators, and classrooms, and to Converge One to renew the licensing for the Cisco Duo multi-factor authentication software and services in the amount of $22,032. Also approving the Kansas Early Head Start Home Visitation Grant in the amount of $190,000. No matches required for the 2023-2024 grant year. To approve the Kansas Early Head Start Child Care Partnership Grant application in the amount of $657,800. No matches required for that for the 2023-2024 grant year. To approve the resolution to establish election of school board officers and to approve the resolution to establish the board's regular meeting dates. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda items? Jim?
Madam President, I'd move that we approve the consent agenda items as presented. I'd also like to point out one thing. Looking through this, I know sometimes districts are challenged for having cash balances with things, but looking at these purchases, we've got over $2 million in computers that are being purchased, and because we're purchasing them in bulk, and we've budgeted this for 4 years, I believe, Mr. Epson, so we've saved these funds for 4 years. We're saving almost $600,000, over 25% of that is savings because we planned that and pooled that and kept that. So I think that's important to point out, and I want to thank the district staff for the planning and the management of those funds. And just because it looks like there's a number there, there's a plan behind that that's very well allocated. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. We have a motion for the consent agenda approval. Do I have a second? Bonnie seconds. Any more discussion on this? Then, all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 6-0. Thanks. Next on the agenda is the public forum, and no one has asked to speak. Next on the agenda is the action agenda, the strategic plan growth measures with Shanna Rector.
Good evening. I'm bringing back to you the strategic plan growth measures, and so these have been outlined in the board packet, and I did present on this information last board meeting, and so if there's any questions today, after you've had a chance to review, I would like to be able to address that. If not, then what I am looking for is an approval of the strategic plan goals.
I did have one question. It seems like we're saying that communication is, hold on. It's like communication is reading, and critical thinking is STEM sort of stuff, where it seems like they're all mixed up together.
Absolutely, they're all together. But one of the things that we wanted to do was to outline what would be some of the ways that we can look at academics in relationship to our goals. And so when we think about communication, that reading aspect and thinking about how do we communicate, reading and being able to take information in and then to communicate about that information is very important. So we aligned this series of strategic goals kind of to those state assessments. When we think about critical thinking, we aligned it to that math assessment and that science assessment, because a big part of that is that critical thinking. And then when you think of the social emotional, we have our chronic absenteeism, and then we also have our student offenses. But I would like to say that as we continue to identify ways to look at our performance in schools, and as we are able to identify additional baseline data, we will be bringing other goals, or we will have other goals that will help us measure our progress to fulfilling our strategic plan goals in our mission.
Thank you.
Can I add just a little bit to that? Remember that we have some skill rubrics that are much more integrated, but we don't have baseline data on those skill rubrics yet. And so until we have that baseline data, we can't set scores for us to work toward for improvement. And our hope is that we will have that baseline data this spring, and then we can look at those, and that will feel like a much more integrated approach. These goals are just set on what we already had in place.
Thank you. Okay, Mark?
I just wanted to say that much like Jim's comments on the budget and planning, these things don't just happen on a dime either. I know we talked about them last month, but this has been going on a whole lot longer than a month. So I recognize that and thank everybody for all their effort. And with that, I'd like to move that we approve the strategic growth plan measures as presented.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Dana seconds. That's been moved and seconded that we approve the strategic plan growth measures as presented. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 6-0. Thank you. Next on the agenda is legislative priorities with Lynn Exline.
Okay, thank you. At our last meeting, we actually went through the recommended legislative priorities. Remember, the goal of these priorities is for us to be able to share them with our representatives so that they have some background on the impact of different policy decisions on USD 305, and so that they have just some information to better ask questions. And then certainly I am available to provide additional information should they call. But we wanted something that they could take with them and have as a resource. So we went through this at length during our work session. At this time, I would entertain any questions and answer those.
Yes, Mark.
I know this was publicized in the Journal. I wonder, did any comments, questions come into the office at all beyond that?
No,
Okay.
none.
Well, I think they're fantastic. I mean, I said this at our workshop. I think they're spot on as far as I'm concerned.
Apologize that I don't remember.
Oh,
Sorry. Will there be a time where we go back after and talk about what happened with each of them? And what we saw happen and what we wish would have happened or we're thrilled that it happened?
right, we certainly could do that. This is the first time that we have separated, since I've been in this position, that we have separated these out to have our own USD 305 legislative priorities. So I am happy to do that on the back end and update you on what laws were actually passed, what policy was presented, so that you can know what is happening in regard to each one of these areas. Okay,
Yeah.
Good idea.
that is something I will be watching closely.
Yes, we may get a blow by blow as it goes along, so.
It started today, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Do I hear a motion then to approve these legislative priorities? Mark?
Move we approve the Salina Public Schools 2023 legislative priorities document as presented.
It's been moved. Do I have a second? Second, Scott seconds. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the Salina Public Schools 2023 legislative priorities. Any other discussion? Then all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 6-0. Thank you. Next on the agenda is discussion agenda with the graduation requirement changes from Curtis Stevens.
Okay, good evening. May it please the board tonight to bring forth an update regarding KSD's graduation requirements. And to give you a little bit of roadmap of what we'll talk about tonight, a brief statement on individual plans of study. ELA, social science and fine arts will be the second portion, and we'll look at some math, science, and PE changes. We'll just talk about adjustments from the state and maybe implications as well for 305. But before we begin with that, in previous presentations, we've talked about the need for individual plans of study and how important those are. And you'll see kind of a little bit a prelude to why that is, but I do want to, for our audience listening, urge any parents and students listening tonight to engage in a conversation with their individual plan of study in our platform that we use called Zello. And to do this is extremely important for crucial and consequential conversations with your student and counselors, not only for their four-year course plan, but also for post-secondary success. Should you need any help, your counselor at the high school can help. We have conferences coming up here in February. It's a great time to come out and talk to our schools, our counselors, our teachers about the course plan for your student. And we also have support in my office through, if you call 309-4757, and an IPS specialist who can help with that. Through the progressive action of this board's past actions with regards to concurrent dual and blended credits with Bethany College, K-State Salina, Salina Area Tech, there is a strong need for the individual plan of study. And what we'll talk about briefly here tonight with KSDE's requirement changes is how there are more options for our students as well. So having that conversation is incredibly important. To start off with, the ELA, Salina Public Schools, as you can see on that chart, will have the first column that has our graduation requirements, what the new KSDE graduation requirements for the class of 2028 will look like, and then what possible considerations for 305 are. The good news is, overall, we're in very good shape with the changes that we have made. So kudos to you for your progressive action and moving us that way. But looking across here, really, you don't, one of the biggest changes with the ELA for for Salina Public Schools is a requirement for 4 years right now, what we have, plus a 0.5 communication credit. And KSDE is wanting to remove that from 4 to 3.5 for ELA and a 0.5 communication credit. The implications for this change would just mean our district would need to decide to remain at 4 plus a 0.5 credit, or adopt the state's 3.5 ELA and a 0.5 communication credit. And I don't really have a great reason for why the state does that, but what you're going to see is 305 overwhelmingly provides more than what is required. Part of that will be decided as we move forward if there would be a change, but at this point in time, we are compliant with that requirement with our existing graduation requirements. The social studies and fine arts doesn't really require any changes, as you can see there when you look at the where 305 is at with what the state has. When we move to mathematics and science, you don't see any changes really there. The state is now requiring a STEM elective, and in the past, we've always required 1 credit for computer credit, and we would need to decide whether or not we would continue with the computer credit, plus separate that from a STEM elective requirement in the future. And as you see in the final section for PE, health, financial literacy, and electives, we would need to determine if we would stay at 1 PE credit or adopt a 0.5 KSDE requirement that actually lowers that. Additionally, we would need to identify courses that meet the individual plan of study choice requirements and determine the number of elective credits that would be required beyond the individual plan of study, where you see it referenced as IPS choices, which are 4.5. As you can see with 305, we have ours listed there at 6.5. So overall, there are minor adjustments at the state level. Again, 305 is in great shape thanks to your previous work in approving various courses that allowed us to stay out in front of these changes. So overall, what you would see then for our credit requirement, and I'm going to zoom down here just a little bit. 305 is at 24. The state would have the total credits remain at 21. We would need to determine as a district the number of credits for graduation, if we would keep that the same or make any changes. So I know that's a lot. The grid kind of helps see, again, the first column, Salina's requirements currently. The second column, KSDE's graduation requirements for the class beginning of 2028. And then those future implications we talked about are kind of in that third column. Are there any questions from the board? Yeah. Dr. Bendry?
So I attended a session at the KASB conference where the legislators, or no, the state school board spoke about their changes. And frankly, I didn't like what they had to say, just to be blunt about it. I like what Salina's Public Schools has, and in particular, I like the 4 years of English. Obviously, I work in higher education, but I interact with the community all the time, and people need to communicate better.
Yeah.
And maybe we could equivocate whether it's 3.5 English, but if we did that, I'd want it to be 1 communications.
Sure.
So, but I don't see any reason to change right offhand. There's just, you can never get perfect at reading, at interpreting, at communicating. So I think that's a particular point to stay, and I don't see any reason to change anything else on there. I think it's going as well as it can.
I just want to point out a couple things. I was I was surprised, frankly, when they went from 4 English credits down to 3.5 and added the communications. I think they were trying to stay with that same 21 credits to graduate. And so they had to take from somewhere to get that communications credit. In Salina, we have always felt like students, that oral speaking, oral communication, which our students can earn that credit through, you may have to help me, Dr. Stevens, debate. We have a oral communication speech class. They can earn that credit through forensics. But that we have always held that students need 4 credits of English and some kind of communications course. I told my own kids that I thought that was one of the most important courses that they take, because it is something that is very difficult to do in public, and learning that skill is critical. But they have to have both. So that, I think we need to weigh that as a district, whether we want to keep our standards like we have them or change. The other place where that came, there were 2 other places where that came into play, and one is that STEM. We have always required a STEM credit, if you will, because the state STEM credit, you can use a computer-based course, or you can use an upper-level math, upper-level science, or an upper-level career and technical education course. So really what we need to decide is, do we want to continue to require a computer-based course and add a STEM requirement, or do we want to morph our computer credit to a STEM requirement? And we really want teacher input on what they think we should do there. We think it's important for us to have teacher input. The final place that I want to point out is on that employability and life skills. We have always required students to take 2 semesters of PE. And we really have felt in this district that physical education and health is important. So we've always had more than the state requirement. And then the other piece is, we do currently have our students enroll in financial literacy. This would be formalizing that. So I think that one of the things that Dr. Stevens and I talked about was, we really need to engage our teachers in a conversation, because our students have the ability to earn 32 credits to graduate. Are there other credits, because we can always have higher standards than the state, that we want to include? Do we, because we could go up to 25 and add that STEM credit if we wanted. And I think those are conversations that really teachers need to weigh in on, and our building level secondary leadership as well. So, but I appreciate your comments. This was an interesting process to watch at the state level. There was a lot of arm wrestling that was going on about what credits that they would recommend being required moving forward.
Thank you, Ms. Exline. I particularly appreciate the thought that a STEM course could be added. I would really be interested to hear what teachers and students, for that matter, think about it. You 2 both know as past principals that my younger son graduated in 3.5 years, and he met all the requirements early. And he graduated from college fine and all that. So I'd be interested to see what additional STEM, what people think about that.
And
Sorry, Ann.
I was just going to add to that with the possibilities that we've also created with the dual, blended, and concurrent, it allows for this notion of, here's our core, here's our expanded core. So they're kind of talking about diploma plus. While students are in high school, the credits, the industry recognized credentials they can earn now that they have that flexibility. So that's something to kind of think about too, that's changed. Yes, Mrs. Emmer?
How long do we have to get this done? Just to the end of the year until we set next year's plan, or longer or shorter?
Well, I have my timetable, but that doesn't always work that way. So I guess my bias, and I'll throw this out there, and then I'll yield to the board's wishes as well as Mrs. Exline's. The sooner the better for planning purposes for our students and our individual plan of study. The sea of things that have to happen kind of behind the doors is just making sure we have our Zello platform to where we can meet the needs for the individual plan of study, so parents are aware. I will actually be a parent of one of the students that this impacts, and so as we're looking and thinking about it, really doesn't cause us to a whole lot of concern, because we know that we're already over a lot of the requirements, but it does allow for greater opportunities for flexibility to know when that for sure is known, because then we can start planning around that. And there are some other intricacies to this when you start kind of getting into the weeds, but I would just say that take your time, discuss it. If you need any other data from other school districts, I have that. Salina is in company with 24 credits. Great Bend, Junction City, Manhattan have 24 credits. So we're very, very similar to other districts. There are some districts that go up as high as 28, which is Mays. I like the idea as a parent, as a flexibility when I'm planning, to allow my student to explore and take different classes. But having that information ahead of time really does help with the planning process. But I guess when I say as soon as possible, not tomorrow, in the course of this year, as more information kind of comes out, that's helpful to know.
If we could have a decision made by the end of this year, the benefit of that we don't have to, but the benefit of that is that this is the students that are seventh grade. So remember, they take their first formal career exploration class, their career and life planning class in eighth grade. That would allow those conversations to start with our teachers. It's really nice when we have the students in the room and the teacher can be having very direct conversations about what's required of you. And so we'd like to be able to engage in those conversations with those students when they're in eighth grade, because when they enter high school, these new graduation requirements would take place and would guide their individual plan of study, which would start really in that eighth grade class as they're talking with the teacher. Okay, so end of the year.
Anne, I have a question. How long would it take to get the teacher input that we need?
Well, I think that can be done relatively easily with our PLC structures, the professional learning communities, where we go out and talk to them and engage in that conversation. Tonight, I know many of them have been following this on the state level. So tonight, kind of hearing what maybe is a time frame from what Mrs. Exline's established, that's something very doable. We also do have, in addition to our PLC time for collaboration, we have time for staff development dates to discuss that. And that will be something we'll move fairly quick. And in terms of our end, once we kind of know that, when we're planning our enrollment guide changes, I usually kind of work with the principals and counselors from September through about October when pre-enrollment begins, and then that goes to what we call print. It's no longer, it's a lot more flexible now that we have Zello and we can import that into our platform. So.
Any other questions?
I was just going to say, I would greatly enjoy getting that information. So,
Sure.
Speaking for myself, I think it'd be a good thing to, whether it's a survey, whatever you do, get that data.
Okay. Do that.
I would agree with that. I'd like to see the information as I scroll through one of the things that I say, I don't know if we can make financial literacy a 1. I think that's something versus a 0.5. I think that's a great skill that can be learned there.
Yeah.
It looks like we're pretty well on track.
Okay, and one of you had asked for some of the data, and I can certainly get that to you. I did pull what currently exists for our school districts and our league, but keep in mind that may change. Some of these changes in other districts started when they had some schedule changes at the high school, but I think COVID and some of that stopped that a little bit. But I certainly have that data if you want that, so just work with Mrs. Exline if you need it, and I'll provide it. So, any other questions?
When you were talking about the data, you mean data from other school districts? Is that what you're talking about?
If you want any information like on credits, or if you're wanting, as the state unpacks us a little bit more, we'll bring that forward too.
Okay, and
Okay.
also, we want to know what the teachers say, so that's
Sure.
the
and
data that you don't
collaborative.
have yet.
Yeah,
right?
those notes as well, and we'll make that available to them. We have already met with our secondary counselors to go over the general requirement changes, so we started that piece. We'll work with our teachers as well, so,
Thank you very much.
all right.
Next on the agenda is the school board reports and upcoming dates of importance. As I recall, we don't have any dates of importance listed here. So I'm going to start with Mark.
It's been a relatively slow month. Between our last meeting and today, I attended a Smoky Hill Education Service Center board meeting, and there was nothing revolutionary there. That group meets again on Thursday, so we'll see what comes, but that's it for this month.
Thank you. Scott?
Had the opportunity to go to the wrestling tournament at South on Saturday, and
I think Central won, is that
I
right?
think Central won. I was really impressed. The girls, the girls program, I'm sorry, they were kicking butt and taking names. I mean, it wasn't, they didn't need to keep score because almost every match ended in a pin. And so I talked to some of the coaches and athletes from other schools, and they were like, yeah, we've been told Central is the one you've got to watch out for. They're just, so I would please get word back to those, and the boys did fine, but they weren't nearly as bad as the girls. There's something going on between South and Central's girls that I don't know, but it was impressive to watch. It only lasted about 20 seconds though, because I'm glad I didn't have to pay to go watch it, because I would have wanted my money back, because I didn't get it. But if you get an opportunity to go watch those girls wrestle, considering how long they've been wrestling, they are impressive. I would be remiss to say that we don't have some kids that are going to go to college on scholarship for wrestling. They are that good. They're worth the opportunity to go and watch. So to the athletic directors who hired those coaches, I tip my hat if I had one.
Thank you, Jim.
No report.
Dana?
No report.
Bonnie?
Is this on?
Yeah, no.
Well, this is the end of my first year as a school board member, and it's definitely quieter than it was a year ago. But I want to thank Lynn especially, because she's so kind and patient and made sure I understood some things, and I'm still learning and understanding more things. And thank you, school board members and executive, and especially Deborah, for just make me feel welcome and to learn, because this is a lot that goes on in this district. And then I realized that education today is not like it was when I was teaching, or even 5 years ago, or things have changed. The teachers, and I know you know all of this, but there's some maybe out there that are listening, but teachers are required to do more than teach. You know, with the COVID challenges, the traumas, the things going on in our country and families, the social media, the rise of trauma and mental health issues, there's just a lot out there, and teachers have to do way more than teach the subjects. And I also know that the education system is in a crisis, because we need more teachers, more administrators, more paras, and it's just a tough job. But one positive note, I was at Red Lobster, and there was a little waitress there, and she's a senior, and I said, what are you going to do when you get out? And she's going into education. So I've also realized even this this is a large district for me, you know, but the main goal for everybody here is to provide the best education for all the students and to help them be successful when they get out of school. And that's the main goal. Do we have room to grow and, you know, get better? Yeah, we do, but that's with everybody. There's always improvements that we can make, but everybody is working as a team that I can see that is making these improvements, because teaching is a tough job. Administrating, you know, and all you guys do, it's a tough job, and you probably don't always get thanked for it. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. I attended the Parks and Rec Advisory Board last year, and they are doing a survey to find the best way to replace the Jerry Ivy Pond because of its blue-green algae problems, and so they're doing a survey of the public. I attended the Chamber of Commerce reception with legislators last week, had a chance to talk with several of them, as did Ms. Exline. One of my more interesting things in the past month was I got to talk to the Lakewood sixth grade English language arts classes. They were reading a book called Touching Spirit Bear, which is about circle justice or restorative justice, which I work with through the Salina Initiative for Restorative Justice. So I was able to talk about some of my real-life cases in central Kansas, which were similar in some ways to the story of this young man who had committed a crime, and he was the main character in Touching Spirit Bear. Now, he was banished to an island in Alaska, and we have never done that in my program, but there were still some similarities. So that's my report. Thank you. And next on the report on the agenda is Ms. Exline.
Well, this afternoon, I had the opportunity to participate in a state superintendent evaluation committee. The USA Kansas, Kansas State University, the Kelly Organization, and the Kansas Association of School Boards are trying to develop some guidance on superintendent evaluation, and so they were asking for input from the field. So that was a fun discussion to participate in. Like Mrs. Zimmerman said, I did go to the Chamber Legislative Roundtable and to the reception. The roundtable where we actually presented the chamber platform went really well. Great conversation, and our representation was very open, and we had a great dialogue. And so I really appreciated that opportunity, and I know they work hard for us, and that can be a thankless job. So it was nice to have them there and actually be able to visit with them about the needs in Saline County. I do have a pre-K school, the Salina Public Schools chat tomorrow evening from 5:15 to 6:15. That is going to be at Heartland Early Education Center. And so we have that Thursday, sorry, not tomorrow.
tomorrow.
Today's only Tuesday. I'm skipping days. And then, thank you, Deborah. And then I have my first chat with our staff tomorrow. I'm meeting with representatives of Chris Upson's Department, Maintenance and Operations, and people to just understand from their perspective what's going well, where can we grow, how can we better support them. And so that will happen tomorrow. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Heartland Early Education Update, which we've all been reading, and then we have 3 executive sessions, and the first one is for safety and security. How long do we need for that?
10 minutes, please.
10 minutes? Do I have a motion? I think Dan is going to get it ready, right? No? Okay, 10 minutes.
Madam
Then Jim?
President, I move that the Board of Education go into executive session at 6:10 for 10 minutes for the purpose of discussing matters relating to the security of the board or the school, to ensure that the security of the school, school buildings, or facilities and the information systems of the school is not jeopardized, and that the Board of Education reconvene into open session at 6:20 in the SEC room.
Do I have a second? Scott seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 6-0. Thank you. We will dismiss to. Are back in session. We have no action to take from that executive session. We have another executive session for personnel. We understand we're going to give ourselves 5 minutes. Do I have a motion?
Madam President, I move that the Board of Education go into executive session at 6:21 for 5 minutes for the purpose of discussing contractual obligations of non-elected personnel, because if this matter were discussed in open session, it might invade the privacy of those discussed, and that the Board of Education reconvene into open session at 6:26 in the SEC room.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, here we go. session, and we do have a motion left over from that executive session. Bonnie?
I move that we approve the request to end the medical leave and allow the employee to return to work on January 11th, 2023.
Been moved. We got a second from Jim. Any discussion? No. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 4-0. We are now going back into executive session for personnel, a little bit longer this time. So we have a motion, Jim?
Madam President, I move that the Board of Education go into executive session at 6:28 for 20 minutes for the purpose of discussing the evaluation of non-elected personnel, because if this matter were discussed in open session, it might invade the privacy of those discussed, and that the Board of Education reconvene into open session at 6:48 in the SEC room.
It's been moved. Do we have a second? Dana seconds. All in favor, raise your right hand. Yes, thank you. We're back in. lost my screen. Okay, we are back and no action to be taken. The next on the agenda is the work session, so is there anything else we need to do up here? Oh, we need to end the live stream, so we will be talking about policies. If you want to get in on it, you can come on down. Thank you.